Hi and welcome again to a new video on the HCBP channel. In today's video, as promised last time, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, and not. Now I know this might sound confusing, but allow me to explain. Performance management, when executed properly, can be one of the best morale boosts you can give to your employees, and you can enrich your culture. However, when it's not implemented properly and the system is under question, it has its implications and drawbacks and actually can lead to quite the opposite of what you want to achieve out of performance management, which is demotivation and disengaged workforce. Now we don't want that to happen. So in today's video, I'll walk you through some of the do's and don'ts, what are some of the common systems out there, and how to hopefully build yourself a good, robust, solid system. Now this video is going to be very useful to you if you're an HR department of one, or if you're an SME, small or medium-sized organization, and you don't have your proper HR function, or you have limited resources and you don't have a lot of money to invest in systems and complex systems actually. So hopefully this is kind of a DIY. Let's dive in. Now, one of the common mistakes when we talk about performance management, everyone jumps to the conclusion that we're talking about performance appraisals. While performance appraisals are pretty much part of performance management in itself is something much wider, much bigger. We're not talking about this session where you sit down with people and tell them how they've done. We're talking about the life of the employee within the organization. How are they integrating? How are they behaving in general? What's the quality of their work? Are they getting feedback on this? So this is more or less what we're talking about. So we're not talking about specifically those situations where you sit down employees and discuss with them what they've done well, what they haven't done well by end of the year, which is a common practice. We're talking about how you engage people from the very beginning and let them understand that they're part of a whole system, a life cycle throughout the year. Their year is their life cycle, the life cycle of their performance for that proper year, and how they integrate into it and what they do from day one to the last day counts towards their performance appraisal. So we're talking about behaviors, we're talking about quality of work, we're talking about a lot of things that we're going to mention later on throughout the video. Now that said, one of the most important things you want to ask yourself, have you as an employer defined what is an acceptable performance? What does good performance sound to you? You know, when we talk about performance and good performance and bad performance, these are very wide and can be very subjective broad lines. Because what's good for you might not be good for someone else, might be exceptional for someone else, and the other way around, it might be actually not so good. So again, having these baseline, these foundations defined in order not to confuse you or your employees so that everybody is clear on what defines good performance is key. It's one of the basics, it's a foundation for any performance management system or any performance management initiative. Once you have that established, you want to ask yourself, how well did I communicate this? Is this clear to me? Is it clear to people? So again, engaging in these conversations with your employees, with your team members, just to make sure that everybody is clear on what is defined as acceptable performance and a good performance practice and a good performance standard. On the other hand, what is also defined as poor performance and how is this dealt with in the organization? Again, this is something foundational and very important for your employees to understand so that you have a clear relationship and a productive performance management culture. So when we're talking about this clarity of performance, we're talking about two different facets. We're talking about the technical skills required to perform the job and the behavioral skills. So are these clear to you and your employee? What are the job expectations from you as a manager and from the employee you're dealing with? Once this is clear, believe me, it's going to be a very productive relationship and performance management discussion of any sort, be it throughout the year, be it at the year end when you're discussing the year performance, will be much easier for you. One other foundational thing is the performance culture in your organization. Now, when we're saying a performance culture, what I mean by that, is this something you teach people from day one? When your employees join, is it part of their onboarding experience? Do they understand that performance is something important in your organization, and that everything they do, all their behaviors, all their work produced is going to be part of this system and not just a one-off exercise? So do you encourage that? Do you encourage your managers to sit down with your employees at least once a month to discuss performance? Do you explain to your employees that this is their right, that they have the right to sit down with their managers on an ongoing basis to just understand how well they're performing, and if they're on track, not on track, what needs to be improved, what's going on really good, what needs to be improved? All these things, they need to be super clear. And to foster a very good performance culture in your organization, a healthy one, you need to have these foundations in place. So this is, again, part of creating that performance culture. So you don't want this to be a one-off or 2 times a year exercise. Performance culture usually, unfortunately, and this is one of the things I really don't like about poor implementation of a performance management system, it becomes an exercise of confrontation and discomfort for both parties, the assessor and the one being assessed, because there is no ongoing relationship, and it's a twice-a-year conversation where it's impossible for both parties to remember all the achievements, all what's been done, all the good stuff, all the bad stuff that happened throughout, and the consistency of the performance. And it will be subject to everyone's own opinion, very subjective conversation, and counterproductive. So that's why it's very important that you have this performance culture this whole year journey. Define and set the expectations with your management and your employees that this is something that they're going to go throughout the whole year, not on occasions. Now, when we talk about performance, we are measuring 5 key things. This is very important because if you don't understand what you're measuring, there's no chance for you to have a productive performance management system and a credible culture of performance management in your organization. So what are these 5 things? First, we have the quality of the work being produced. Why is this important? Because people work and produce results, but if these results are not up to the quality that you require in your organization, or maybe they're within the standards of what you're expecting, or maybe they're quite high above, if you don't have this differentiation, you'll never be able to assess fairly, which is not good for you or for your employees. So number 1, quality. Number 2 is impact. What is the impact these results are producing to the organization? What is their impact on the organization's bottom line? Now, everything we do, part of our performance, has to link somehow to the organization's objectives. Otherwise, what's the point of setting that objective? What are we doing? What value are we adding? Now, when I say the impact on the organization, not strictly the bottom line, I'm talking about the image of the company. This is a huge impact if you do something that helps the image of the company, or if it's financial. So again, soft impact or financial impact. What is the impact this person is producing? Again, is one of the metrics you want to be looking at. Third thing is timeliness. So timeliness is very important because every task you perform for a reason, and it has its time frame, and it has to be performed during this time frame. Otherwise, it loses value. It's not as powerful, not as impactful as you want it to be. So again, you need to make sure that you stick to the timelines, and that the performance and the impact, the quality and the impact that are being produced within the timelines that you have set. So again, timeliness is very important. The fourth component is effectiveness. Again, producing results with quality, on time, and with impact, but not effectively, is going to be a concern. So what is effectiveness? Effectiveness is a very important metric that tells us how effective was the job performed. So if you don't have a metric to assess how effective you've done something, then again, maybe it will impact the end result. Maybe you could have been more effective. Maybe you could have done something better. So again, it's a quality check. Effectiveness, if you like to think about it, it's a quality check on how well you've done that. What differentiates effectiveness from quality? The quality, we're talking mostly about the result itself. How good is it? Effectiveness is the way it's been done. And the last metric we want to look at is efficiency. Efficiency is very important because if you look at a job, as they say, there's 100 ways to skin a cat. So when you talk about efficiency, let's say you have X amount of resources. When you achieve this goal, did you use all your resources? Did you use some of your resources to still produce the result? Or did you go above and beyond the limit that was given to you, and you used more resources than you should have to complete the job? So again, efficiency is a very important metric. And with all these 5, we have a good foundation to rate people. So again, the 5 metrics are quality, impact, timeliness, effectiveness, and efficiency. These are the things you want to measure. Now let's talk about how you put that into context. The most common way to do things is by using KPIs, or what we call as key performance indicators, where you put in statements that describe indicators of what a good performer, of what good performance looks like. So this is your main statement, if you like. So you define your goal, you put in a KPI, and then you put in KRAs, which are key results areas. So again, you break down your KPI into KRAs, and you define in detail how will you achieve this KPI. So this is a very common way. However, there's a very interesting new concept, which I actually am advocate for, which is MSCs. So what are MSCs? MSCs are musts, shoulds, and coulds. Let me explain. Musts are the non-negotiables, are the things that you need to perform in order to be successful in your job. Shoulds are the things that you should do if you want to differentiate yourself from others. And coulds are the things that you could do to even shine above and beyond the call of duty and be exceptional at what you do. Now, going back to goal settings, when you're setting goals for your employees, you need to bear in mind that there are certain things they can influence, there are certain things that they cannot really directly influence. So a good goal setting is something that takes into consideration what you should do as the manager. Again, some of the things that they work on, they contribute towards achieving your own objectives. However, cascading your objectives as is to your employees is not the right approach. You have certain accountabilities, you have certain authorities that they do not possess. So it wouldn't be very fair to just cascade your goals as is to your team and just say, hey, these are the things that we need to achieve this year, go and achieve them. That's not very good practice. What you want to do is help your employees find their own way of doing their job to the best of their ability so that they can help contribute towards achieving your goals as the manager. Let's take an example. You're a manager, you're responsible for the top and bottom line of your business. Now, cascading this objective as is to your frontliners will be super frustrating for them because there are certain things they cannot influence unless they're salespeople. I'm talking about your day-to-day staff, your cleaners, your things. You cannot really link what they do to the top and bottom line. However, what they do impact the top and bottom line. So let's take this example. Let's say you have a cleaner in your business and that cleaner is actually cleaning the floor, and then you put in their objectives, achieve the top and bottom line of the organization. Now this would be quite unfair because a cleaner, while their work really contributes to you having more people in, they don't really have an impact on the top or the bottom line. It's not their job. Their job is to do as best as they could in terms of cleanliness and hygiene, so that your customers, when they come to your facility, when they come to your office, when they come to wherever you conduct your business, they can actually feel that this is a safe place, it's a healthy place where they can conduct their business. So again, be mindful of what your objectives are and what your team's objectives should be. Don't mix both and just cascade blindly. One other important thing. Now, we talked about continuous performance management, not one-offs. It's very important that throughout this continuous performance management that you capture everything that's happening. What do I mean by that? We humans, when we want to remember stuff, if we're in a good mood, we remember the good stuff at times. If we're in a bad mood, we remember the bad stuff at times. So the best approach towards being completely fair and transparent in a performance management session is to actually record things so that you don't forget. You're bound to forget. Let's say you have a mid-year appraisal and an end-of-year appraisal. Now, let's be very, very objective here. How much do you think will you remember as the manager who has 200,000 other things on their plate about that particular employee, everything they've done throughout every day? What will stick out mostly are the very good stuff and the very bad stuff. And the only stuff that you will remember very clearly are the things that happened throughout the last couple of weeks, which is really not fair to the employee. So again, record things and keep track of your meetings, have them minuted, so when you go to the performance management end of the year appraisal, or the mid-year if you have one, you have your data, you have your database, and you can have a productive and fair conversation, not a whimsical or a biased one, or one that is affected by your moods and feelings for the day, which would be totally unfair to your employees. One very common practice is linking performance to pay. Now, this is a very common approach. I personally don't like this approach at all. I like to keep things separate because linking performance to pay will lead you into trouble. Let's take this example. You had one of your employees who's a superstar, a top performer, in one of the best years ever in his career. That person, he or she, they delivered amazing results. They're not salespeople, so they don't really impact directly the company's top line or bottom line. But within their function, they performed their very best. So they're full of confidence going into that performance management discussion, and they're very optimistic about what's going to happen next. Now picture this. They go with that amount of confidence and they know they've been doing well, and you've been having your one-to-ones every month, and they're very confident about where they are. And then towards end of the year, your company doesn't perform that well. You don't achieve your top line, you don't achieve your bottom line, and you're sitting down in a performance appraisal conversation and you're linking that person's performance to their pay. Got the point? That will not be very smooth, because they will come to this conversation thinking about, okay, I'm gonna make good money this year because I've been a superstar. That's what I'm used to, because we pay for performance. But again, you really cannot pay him. What if your company decides not to give any increases, any allowances this year because of the financial performance? So this is my personal take why I don't like linking performance to pay, because a lot of things could go wrong, and keeping them separate would protect that conversation, will keep it productive, the performance conversation, and the finances will follow later. And if you establish this with your employees from the day they join, if you do the right hires, then you need to trust them to be senior and mature enough. Well, even if they're not senior, just mature enough to understand that if the company had a bad financial year, there will be repercussions and there will be consequences on the pay. And stripping away the performance conversation completely from the financial performance of the company will help you have better results and hopefully more engaged employees who understand what you're going through, because they live with you, and if you're transparent with your results, your financial results, they would definitely understand. So give them that benefit of the doubt that they would understand. And believe me, if you're a small or medium-sized organization, you need to try and keep these conversations separate. Otherwise, performance, pay for performance can become very messy when things don't go the right way or the way you anticipated them to be. Now, going back to your performance management system, the structure of your system. And by system, I don't mean a software, I'm talking about the performance management, the way you conduct your performance management. You need to be very careful about how you design things, how you design the system in order to be fair. What do I mean by that? Like with anything that's research-based, that needs to be proven, we're talking about validity and reliability. Are your performance metrics valid? Do they serve the purpose they need to serve? Do they measure the things they need to measure? And are they reliable? If you had the same thing happening in the same sequence, in the same way, will you have the same results when conducting performance review? These are two important things that you need to keep in mind in order for you to be fair and for your system to be fair. So again, validity and reliability. Now let's talk about scales and ratings. How do you rate performance? How do you scale it? There are different ways. My least favorite one is the standard distribution or the normal distribution curve. Actually, anything that's forced rating or forced ranking is something I advocate against. However, the worst of these is the bell curve. Why? Because it buckets people into categories, and it assumes that you will always have very poor performers, bottom 10%, bottom 15%, and depends, actually the percentages, they depend on how aggressive the organization goes with the normal distribution, and the top ones, who are the top 10 or 15%, that are, you know, the exceptional and high contributors. And it buckets everyone else in the middle as the average standard employee who performs. What are the drawbacks of this system? The drawbacks of this system are quite significant. First off, we're talking about a large number of poor performers, people performing below the average, below the standard. My take, if you're an HR professional, if you're a manager, and you interviewed this employee and you have 10 to 20% bottom performers, you're in the wrong business, dude. You need to change your job, because obviously you're not very effective at employing people, and you cannot really find the right fit for your organization or the right people for the right place. This is a huge percentage, and usually it's shape up or ship out. This is how they're treated. So again, is that the kind of culture you want to have in your organization? A culture where you say, oh, okay, I have to have that many people who are poor performers? No. It's a statistical approach. It was found by a mathematician back in the 1800s, a German mathematician, and it has been applied, unfortunately, to HR evaluation systems. So again, one of the most common approaches, not my favorite. And by the way, a lot of companies these days are steering away from the standard distribution curve. Usually it follows a 5 Likert scale performance evaluations, anything from very bad performers to basic performers, average ones, high and exceptional performers. So that's the kind of distribution they follow. Now, moving on from the bell curve, we have another approach that is followed by other companies that is actually much better, I have to admit. Google actually follows this approach, which is the power law. Now, what does the power law say? It's also a curve, if you like, a statistical thing, a mathematical thing. However, it assumes much lesser amount of poor performers in the business, which is more realistic, because if you're doing your job properly, hopefully, And performance managing people throughout the year, you shouldn't have any poor performers, to be very honest with you. Or if you have, not that many. And puts the majority, the chunk of people in average performance, which is fair enough, and only select few as the top performer. So that's also a better system, still much better than the bell curve, but it's not my favorite system. Now, my favorite system that I've seen in any of the businesses I've been to is actually here. I was introduced to here in Dubai in one of the companies, one of the big companies in Dubai. They actually have a matrix, a performance matrix. That performance matrix, it's huge, gigantic. It has like hundreds of cells. Well, not maybe hundreds, maybe tens of cells. But what they do is that they bucket behaviors and bucket technical skills, technical expectations into performance categories. And if you check these boxes, then you get that rating, straightforward. No linkage to anything else, no linking to performance, no linking to financial performance. It's purely based on how you perform. However, it's very strict. So these are very finely crafted, and it's very challenging, which is good because performance objectives, they need to be challenging. But again, it's very fair, very transparent. All the employees, the HR director there told me that all the employees, they've seen this table, this matrix. So they know exactly, if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm going to get that rating, regardless of how the company performs. That is amazing. That is a very good approach. So if you can think of implementing something similar, I think this is the best approach I've seen towards performance management to date.